this session first?
It's already on.
Okay. Hello everyone. Happy to see all of you and welcome back to today's session organized by Vodan Africa and Asia. My name is Putu Hadi, and our focus today is to discuss Vodan Africa and Asia update, especially about the CEDAR FDV architecture and also the updates from data access control and security. And the last session is update on FAIR Special Journal. As always, try to keep our mic mute during presentation to prevent background noises. If you have any question while the presentation is going on, please type them into the chat box. So I will now hand over to Professor Francisca. The floor is yours, Professor Francisca.
All right. Thank you very much, Putu. I'm sorry. Thank you so much, Putu, and welcome everyone. We'll have to especially welcome Professor Miriam, who is always with us every week, and Beth Mira from the GoFair Foundation, who continues to provide that technical and institutional framework support for the FAIR principles. And we have Dr. Ronald De Jong from Philips Foundation. Thank you very much for coming to join us for today's edition. Dr. De Jong is from just sponsored those people that planted the first seed of these projects. They were the first to trust us before the FMO and Google and every other organization came on board. So we'll continue to be indebted to them and continue to appreciate their support, because they didn't stop even with the seed funding. They are also sponsoring the second phase of this project, and we know we can continue to count on their support. Thank you very much. As Putu said, we are going to be having updates on our CEDAR localization architecture, and then on the special issue as part of our documentation. Then the access and control team will have an update from them. And then the team from Ethiopia, they have been away and they have joined us now. We expect to have an update to be presented by Wandimo. So let us at least have an idea of what they have been doing. Getu and Samson were with us earlier. They came from Mekele to Addis Ababa, and then they had to return to Mekele. We're expecting them back in the next few days or weeks. They will join us again. For pending that time, we have been in touch through Dr. Araya. If we have information or any questions for them, we take it through Dr. Araya, who is in Addis Ababa, and I've been receiving response. So if it is okay to share my screen. One minute, please. Okay. So we have an improved, if you like, or revised architecture for the CEDAR localization project. We have seen the initial architecture that was approved, and then we received some input from members of our community, and we have come up with this. And also remember that in addition to the COVID-19 observational patient data and healthcare data in the implementation country for this second phase, we also have our colleagues in the other partner countries that we continue to provide support for, that collects COVID-19 data, but this time around their research data, not patient data. And also within our community, we have PhD and master's students who are conducting research under the FAIR principles, under the supervision of Professor Miriam, Dr. Araya, Dr. Reginald, Dr. Sakinat, me, and then some of our colleagues from Leiden and Tilburg under the GAIC network. So we feel in addition to the health data, we see an opportunity to also localize the research data coming from our candidates for master's and PhD within the GAIC university partners. I'll be sharing in the chat room later. I already did at the time, but as a refresher, to share the link to the homepage of the GAIC program on the Nuffic Dish platform so that you can read further to see the objective and then the list of the partners. And of course, yes, Dr. Ronald De Jong is also one of the supervisors under the GAIC network. So we decided to have an architecture for the health data, a similar architecture for localization of CEDAR, but for research data, and then to have a combined architecture that takes care, and it is open and expandable. So when we have new set of data to also collect and verify in future projects, we can always, from this baseline architecture, expand and then define the architecture for that kind of data. So we have the COVID-19 clinical data architecture, which is the first one. Remember now we have the bulk input. The problem of bulk input has been solved by our team in Mekele, led by Getu and Samson. And then there is an embeddable editor at the level of the clinic that will permit the data entry for both single data input and bulk input for data that are already in place. And from there, we have the metadata. This time around, we have two sets of metadata. We have the metadata description to ensure the findability of the clinic. So for each of the participating clinic, we're going to have the metadata specification for each one. And then for the content, the data from the clinic, we also have the metadata specification. So this time around, we're implementing findability for two key objects, if you like. The clinic as an object whom we collect data on, and then the patient as an object that the clinical data will be collected on. And from this point, we have the storage, the repositories. So we have the joint repository with all the other partners under the other Dutch COVID-19 research. We have the Andrea, and of course we have those other people that are working in CEDAR and us. And we have the DHIS, which will now be another storage, which is already in place in Zimbabwe. They have their own localized, they have their own Zimbabwe version of DHIS. DHIS is also available in Ethiopia and Uganda. It is a kind of a default health data management system. We're not trying to replace, we just want to make the data fair, make it findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. So we have provided the embeddable editor that will enable us to verify the data, and then the data is now stored in the DHIS. And we have these two repositories in residence. We have the repository in residence at the health facility, and then we have the joint repository metadata repository for CEDAR, for research, and the Andrea project. For visualization, that is about storage. So we have the input on the left, we have the storage in the middle, and then for the output, there are three levels of visualization here. There is the dashboard for the analytics within the hospitals and clinics only. So at the discussion points, we're going to have an agreement on the kind of data they want to see and the kind of access level. So the kind of data that will be available for researchers, for example, in the clinic, will probably not be the same view level for the medical workers, would probably not be the same view level for the medical record keepers. So we have an agreement, and they can always tweak it to see the different levels of visualization based on access level in the hospital. And then we're going to be publishing the fair edition of that data as a CEDAR data point. This will be an indexed reachable web address. And of course, the data that will be available also will be in consultation with the owners of the data that generated the data. And then as a third level of visualization, we're going to have the Vodan Africa dashboard, where we can list in the form of metadata in the approved format, the clinical data. Presently, you see our present FDPs. There is a dashboard by the GoFair, the home.fairdatapoints.org, I think, that lists all the GoFair, Vodan in a box fair data points. So the same way, we're going to have the metadata description that will form the dashboard for the Vodan Africa dashboard that will contain information about the status, the kind of data, the location, the ISO number, every other information that we have collected about the CEDAR data points for clinical data. The next architecture is on the data. We have looked at the architecture for clinical data. Now, in place of the hospital, for the embeddable editor to take the input and the bulk input is the university. So in this university, we're talking about the universities in the GAIC network. We have the universities in Kenya, in Uganda, Ethiopia, and of course we have the Tilburg and Leiden in Europe. We're bringing in more universities from Nigeria, Liberia, and the other countries. We have Zimbabwe and Tunisia. So we have the embeddable editor at the level of the university to accept the input and the bulk input on COVID-19 research data. And we're going to specify this as the verification process in rich metadata so that the research data can be findable, can be accessible, can be interoperable and reusable. And we'll now have university repositories to hold this verified data. And in the same way, we're going to have 3 levels of visualization. At the level of the university, there will be the dashboard for the analytics, and the partner universities will decide on the different access level and then the view level depending on the kind of user for research students, for other organizations that are interested in accessing the research data, for ordinary enthusiasts, the kind of level of data that will be available will be agreed with the university. The second layer of visualization is the published address. It's going to be indexed across all search engines and the reachable address, a URL of the CEDAR data point on research data. And the third one is the metadata for the research data of the Vodan Africa dashboard. So at one click, at one glance, we can actually see through the dashboard the list of research data for the Vodan Africa project coming from the GAIC university GAIC member universities. And finally, we have this combined architecture, which combines both the clinical data architecture and the research data architecture. And who knows, in another phase, we could have some other kind of architecture, some other kind of data we want to collect, and we can integrate it here. So here for the inputs, we have the editor, could either be that of the hospital or the university, depends on where the data is being implemented. And then the rich specification in metadata could be for clinical data or clinical data in the university. And then at this point of storage, we have the joint repository from other similar projects that we are cooperating with, like the work being done under the Zone MV by Eric, and then the work of the LUMC under the supervision of Eric Flickenshid and Rita. And we have the DHIS storage for the hospitals, the health ministries in the participating countries that use the DHIS. And for some other countries that may join the network later, they have their own separate healthcare management system at national level. It is not a problem at all, because that is one of the things we get with CEDAR, that ability to build different levels of templates based on need. CEDAR is that it gives us that flexibility to define different kinds of template, depends on the kind of data. And then we have the repository at the level of the clinic for clinical data and at the level of the university for research data. And we have the 3 levels of visualization, the dashboard at the clinic level for the participating health facilities or at the university level for participating research facilities. And there is the public address that is available, that is indexed across different search engines. Google had already promised to help us with the indexing of our data points. And then finally, we have the Vodan Africa dashboard that contains the metadata for either clinical data or research data. Depends on whether it is a participating university or research institution or a participating medical facility. So I have presented to you the enhanced or modified architecture based on the input that we received from the members of the community last week when it was first presented, and also from technical partners from LUMC and then Gofair Foundation, the Health RI from Eric Chartes. So the members of our community are welcome to make inputs, further input on this. Yesterday we presented this at the CEDAR meeting, and there were some input, but we didn't have enough time to implement those changes. So if we get all the inputs today, then we can go back, Professor Miriam, Obina and I, we can go back and make the review and then make the further changes as is approved by the technical meeting of today. Thank you very much. So Putu, you can, yes, you can anchor the question and answer.
Yeah, thanks, Professor Francisca, for your comprehensive explanation about the Vodan FDP and CEDAR architecture. If there is any question, you can ask by, okay, Professor Ronald de Jong, go ahead.
Thank you very much. Let me first express again our full support to this very important undertaking. As a Philips Foundation, we take great pride in being able to support this initiative. We see the importance in the context of our access to health ambitions, and we feel that we are really contributing also to making progress in the context of SDG 3. I also want to express my respect and appreciation for the progress that has been made. Unfortunately, I've not been able to attend many meetings, but I've been following it closely, and I very much am impressed with, let's say, the steps taken by the team. Now, I feel that we are coming at a pretty crucial phase where choices are being made on architecture, design, and tooling. And based upon our experience in similar undertakings, it is very important that those choices are clear, transparent, and above all, supported by all relevant stakeholders in the project, because we will live with the consequences of those choices for the years to come. And as a major supporter of this undertaking, I would like to make sure that there is no misunderstanding on, let's say, the agreement of all stakeholders and the support of all stakeholders for those choices made. That is one of the main reasons that I wanted to also attend this meeting, as I know that you are discussing the technical side of it as we speak, and it constitutes for us a major milestone in this entire undertaking. So can you please comment on that, Professor Francisca, on the design choices, the architecture chosen, as well as the tools like CEDAR and others, that we have an unequivocal support from all stakeholders to live with the consequences of those choices. Thank you.
Okay, Professor Francisca, you can go ahead to answer the question.
Okay, if I understand the questions, the major stakeholders, we have the implementation countries, and then we have the supporting countries. We have implementing countries of Zimbabwe, Ethiopia, and Uganda. And then we have the three supporting countries of Tunisia, Nigeria, and Kenya. And we have at different levels debated this architecture. Many of us are also researchers, and that is why we keep on bringing this for comments and contributions, and we keep on coming up with refinements. It is very common in science and engineering project that until the work is turned in finally, incremental refinements is possible, so long as it does not impinge on the interest of any of the stakeholders. Then we have the Gofair Foundation, which the technical lead or technical person has been Eric Schultes, and then Eric also has made contributions to this architecture as one of the stakeholders. Then we have the LUMC that we have been cooperating with, LUMC is especially involved in our Data Competence Center, which is the training of data stewards. And then, of course, in areas of common interest, because the Vodan Africa data points are not going to exist in isolation. They are going to be able to also form form part of a network of data points, global data points, based on the FAIR principle, which is not just for the Vodan Africa. So Eric of the LUMC, we had met last week and also presented this architecture. He had taken a look and made input, and part of his input was what also gave rise to the presentation of this revised architecture. And then under the Zone Envy project, they already also, if actually Erica UMC had even adopted this architecture, the revised version of this architecture. And then at the level of visualization, Eric is leading the access and control, working with Putu. He's a major contributor, a major technical lead for the access and control. And they are defining the different levels of access that they will be acceptable or agreeable to the stakeholders in the implementation country. So far, Africa partners have been part of these decisions in terms of architecture and tool. And then the European partners, the LUMC, the GoFair Foundation, have also made a lot of contributions to this architecture. So I'm not sure if I've answered all the questions.
Let me refine, if I may. And if this takes too much time, please cut me off and we can take it offline. But I fully appreciate the process. I also am familiar with the fact that there is stepwise refinement based upon the multi-stakeholder setting. What my question to you is, will this meeting result in a formal decision that is binding all stakeholders to the key choices that are being made in terms of architecture, in terms of design, and in terms of tooling? Because that would constitute a formal milestone, and within that framework, you can still stepwise refine. But if we would have a presentation and let's say 3 months from now or 3 weeks from now, we would again have a discussion, a fundamental discussion on design choices, tooling choices, and architecture choices, I would be worried. So my question is, will there be a point in time, and will this meeting be that point in time where we formally agree with those basic choices, obviously allowing for further refinement within that framework going forward?
Okay, thank you. Now I understand it. The body responsible for giving approval on the final implementation, design, implementation, and retooling choices is the Vodan Africa board. And on the 20th of January, it has given approval for the operationalization of this architecture. What we're doing here is just technical refinement that does not affect the overall architecture, which I had also presented to the steering committee. So whatever is done here does not in any way affect the decision that has been taken. The base requirements architecture has been approved by the Vodan Africa board and also presented to the steering committee chaired by Professor Miriam. So whatever is being done here are architectural refinements that falls within the approved requirements and specification.
Clear. And that includes the choices for tooling?
Yes, the choices for tooling has been made and approved by the Vodan Africa board. That's, yes.
Thank you. That was my question. Thanks for a clear answer.
Hello.
Hi, Bex.
Yeah, Bert, do you want to comment or ask something? Go ahead.
Yes.
Oh, Abdullahi, sorry.
Yeah, it's fine. Thank you, Putu and Professor Francisca, for the architecture. I think for most of us, we're visual, and then we can now understand where we're going forward with a lot of things. However, I was just, so I'm not sure. Yeah, so it's a follow-up question to what we had now. it will be useful to understand tools and architecture behind each of those. So we know, for instance, CEDAR platform will be used to enter data, right? And or we'll have a platform to enter bulk data, which will go into CEDAR, and then which can now be passed to the DHIS systems accessible to the parties. But what is not clear, or I don't know how that is. So in terms of the analytics and the dashboard, what tools and technology are we using for this, or are we building them from scratch? So that's like the question. I don't know if there are answers to this, but I feel it could be useful also using some technologies that exist rather than reinventing the wheel, right? So for instance, Google have this data studio, which helps in visualization, and that could be useful. Not saying we must use that, but it's something to consider, especially because they are part of our funders. So really, it will be useful to know what tools will be used for each of those segments of the framework. Thank you.
You can directly answer, Professor Francis.
Yes, yes. Thank you. Sorry, I wanted to see if Miriam will be able to provide further answers on this as the technical coordinator. But then the CEDAR metadata has we are like co-developers now for CEDAR. We're routing CEDAR to our own need. So we have different groups. The Putu, for example, is leading the team for access and control, which will also talk about visualization as part of their work in access and control. And then, of course, we have the CEDAR template, which the CEDAR localization, which Aliyah is leading. So CEDAR and BioPortal, it's an integrated environment which we are retooling to fit our own need. So our visualization at different levels, once we agree with the clinics and the hospitals on the participation, of course, for the reachable address, the CEDAR data point, there is no problem. That is a given. It's part of CEDAR. But every other visualization, once we agree with the participating clinics and universities, then we'll retool CEDAR to enable us do the visualization of the dashboard. Just like when we did the proof of concept, we had a homepage for the visualization of all the FDPs. So it is the same way we're going to create our homepage for the visualization of the different kinds of data. So we're doing everything within the CEDAR space. And then if for any reason, for example, the team at IBBUL decide they want to use the Google tool, Google has given us a free rein. They have made promises. They're one of our sponsors, and they have said, oh, if we need to use any of the tools, we feel free. And then our data points are going to become Google data reference. They have already agreed that our data points, once they're published in this second phase, they're going to be part of the data source for all their COVID-19 research. So we're retooling to be able to work as a plugin to different research platforms. Miriam and Aliyah want to also add their thoughts to that.
I think you mean Mariam, right? Mariam on the...
Yes, Mariam Basaja. We have so many Mariams. Mariam Basaja or Aliyah.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, Mariam.
Well, I think Professor Francisca, you've basically given an explanation of everything in a nutshell, but in case anyone has any questions towards the template creation, then yeah, feel free to ask.
Sakinat, do you want to comment or ask something? You can go ahead, Dr. Sakinat.
Yes. Before Dr. Sakinat, had actually even built the visualization templates in CEDAR
Okay.
based on the DHIS forms, yes. And I think it was presented earlier. Perhaps next meeting, I'll call Miriam to represent that visualization so that the IBBL team can also take a look and build the levels of visualization. But based on the DHIS, now Miriam had built the visualization templates. Dr. Sakinat, yes.
Yeah, thank you so much. This architecture is really inspiring. But you know, anytime we bring this up, what comes to my mind is this data train. I just want to know if we have any concept similar to that data train, because when I see two architecture or two different levels, it looks like a workstations to me, and then our visualization looks like the train, and then they all go fair. So I don't know if we can answer it now, maybe later. I just want to know the relationship between the two concepts, but this looks more like a fair data train for me. Thank you.
Well, that is actually true, Dr. Sakinat, because when we have been discussing this with the Personal Health Train LUMC project, they are actually deciding to take over the same architecture. So that's well spotted. Good comment, very good.
Yeah, maybe we can, Bert, you can go ahead.
Yes, I also wanted to say a few words about the architecture and the tooling. First of all, big compliment to Francesca. Excellent explanation of what we have been achieving so far. And what I like very much about this is the step-by-step approach. So my view would be, let's first really, let's say, work now with this architecture. Because we all feel that this is the way to go. And then in terms of the tooling, I think there's still some room to actually discuss that at a later stage. Some of the tooling, of course, we've already fixed, or we've already agreed with each other, like the fair data point, for instance, or CEDAR. I mean, that is clear. But to take, for instance, on the dashboard side, on the API side, there's still, there's still several options, I would say, and probably that tooling we may decide slightly later. So I think this is the right way to actually do it. First, the architecture, then we look at some of the features in terms of the design, and then later on, some of the tooling is already fixed, and some of the toolings we can still discuss at a later stage.
Thank you. Then we had considered several options, including meeting with different technical teams that were involved in the first phase of the project before we agree on this as the tooling, the acceptable tooling. And the board of Vodan Africa, and also made up of the implementation partners and the supporting partners, had agreed on this as the tooling that we need. So for this phase of the project, this is the exact tooling and the tooling that we need for this phase of this project. I'm not sure, it's not likely that we want to start discussing other options because the board had already given an express approval. We have spent so much time having meetings, setting up sub-technical teams, and putting so much work into coming to this final architecture of tooling, including tooling and dashboards and the input. And we have actually tried to solve some of the problems ourselves, even when we have not formally commenced the doing of the project, before we presented the final requirements and specification architecture to the board, and it was approved. So I'm not sure, it's not likely we'll actually think of considering any today. The LUMC team, they have taken a look and actually adopted this. The Zone MV project with Health and Rye, they have taken a look and also adopted this. So we don't have any need or any reason to start considering any other visualization tooling. But like I said, the architecture is open. If any other team wants to make this a starting point, they're welcome to. That is the idea behind the FAIR principle and the open science principle anyway. It's going to be open, and then any other team can actually make this the starting point of their own future projects.
Yes, and I understand that, of course, but my line was more, if we need at a certain stage a piece of tooling, for instance, for a dashboard or for an API or for something else, that still would fit very nicely in this architectural picture that you are showing here.
Yeah, but not for us, because we're doing a lot of work every week trying to retool CEDAR to fit into our need. So we cannot really take on, and we would not be able to take on any additional retooling. But if any group or any team wants to take this architecture from our implementation to make it the starting point for their own implementation, they are welcome to. That's the point I'm making. But for this project, I may not be able to promise that we'll have to retool any other technology for the visualization, because we have put in so much work into getting into where we are.
I understand. Perfect. And that is fine.
Within the time frame of the project as well.
Yeah.
Professor Francesca, can I ask a question based upon the discussion? Because the discussion between Mr. Meerman and yourself is exactly the reason that I made the point that I made earlier on. And that is on the, let's say, the nature and character of the decisions made with respect to design, architecture, and tooling. I don't know, and you need to help me with that, how to interpret the comment made by Mr. Meerman. So how many degrees of freedom are there when it comes to deviating from what you're currently presenting?
Well, I have no idea of what the specific, he himself doesn't have any specific tool that he's proposing. But for this project, for this FMO project, we need to move forward. We have a time frame and we need to complete the project. And we have the technology in place. We have already put together the architecture and everything in place to build it to the visualization stage. So if there is any other tooling that is coming up, they're free to use our dashboard to continue. But for us, we cannot accommodate any degree of deviation at this point.
No, and I would agree with that, but are we all in agreement with that? Maybe Mr. Meerman can comment on that. It might be that I'm only confused for the wrong reasons, but are you in accordance with what was just shared, Mr. Meerman?
Yes, I am in accordance with that. Absolutely. My statement was more in terms of architecture first, then the design, and then if there are at a certain stage, if we may need certain tooling, fine. If all the tooling has already been defined right now, perfect. Perfect. Okay. And we should not change that. Okay. There is absolutely no need. There's no need for a certain tooling. My line was more do things step by step, as what I've seen, and that is very, very good. No problem with that.
Okay, no, clear. Thanks for that clarification. Professor Francesca, it is my understanding that those decisions also with respect to tooling have been taken, right? And that you are comfortable with that.
Yes, the decision has been taken, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I think I will move to the next session because we don't have more time. And maybe we can discuss the architecture later in the different session. So I will move to access and control session, and I will present the layers of access and control. So this is the layers of access and control, and basically we want to increase trust from the architecture, and we should develop a holistic way for the architecture. So we should use the current tools and also look at the architecture. So basically that's this layer is a combination of the current document of Vodan Africa and also the requirement of the architecture. So the first layer is data processing agreement. because in the agreement there is a content about the data access and control, and also should follow GDPR. And the second layer is fair equivalency tools, because it contain the local regulation equivalency with fair. So and the next access and control is agreement on the template. On the architecture you can see the metadata template, so we should check the access and control on the agreement on the template. And the fourth layer is agreement on the repositories, so we should check also who the access and control on that repositories that you previously saw on the architecture. And then the next access and control requirement is from the dashboard of the facilities. It is about the construction of the dashboard, because who has access to the dashboard and for what is the dashboard for. And the last layer is the generic dashboard of Vodan Africa. It is about community agreement on what will be in the dashboard. So basically that's the 6 layers of access control and security. Maybe if Professor Miriam want to add something to this layer.
No, I think it's very excellent clarification. So the data processing agreement, every partner of Vodan Africa has already signed it. It's based on the GDPR, because GDPR says that if there's a European partner involved, the highest standards should be used. So that is what has been done. The analysis of the fair equivalency tools, which really sets, as you say, the regulatory framework in every jurisdiction and can be done at different levels, has been carried out. So now the work that Mariam is working on, designing the templates according to DHIS, has already per agreement in the clinic, so that it seamlessly relates to the flow, the information flow in the clinics. Is the next level, and where we now need to really start doing the operationalization is the agreement on repositories in residence or another place if the clinic chooses to do so, and then the data to be pushed in the dashboard, which then will give live updates like we have seen in the Health Array dashboard every 15 minutes. That will be the next level of agreement, where there can be differentiation of the dashboards in the facilities. They can be specific to the facilities. The generic dashboard of Vodan will have to be agreed between the facilities within the project, but there can be, as per your design of the stoplight, there can be an opt-out for particular data that the clinic wouldn't want to provide for the generic dashboard. So I think that this is complementary to the architecture that we have just seen, and very nice presentation, by the way, Putu, very, very good visual. I think it's good to discuss some questions. Also looking at the clock, we need to also spend a little bit of time on the other updates still.
Thanks, Professor Miriam. We can move to maybe, there is a question from Abdullahi. So go ahead, Abdullahi.
Yes, so I was just comparing over my head with the architecture. So there is a mention of universities, but it's evidently absent in this access and security architecture. How is that represented, please? Can you clarify that?
Do you take it, Putu, or should I take it?
Oh, maybe you can take it, Professor Miriam.
Yeah, so it's true, Abdullahi, that this one was the work of Putu in relation to the Vodan health data, patient data infrastructure. But the equivalence of this for the Tunisia group wouldn't be very different. There's still the data processing agreement and the fair equivalency tool. Also the agreement on the template, which I mean will be the decision here by Tunisia, but in relation to all of the ZON-MW, the 61 COVID-19 research programs of the funders ZON-MW, they have their own agreements on templates where Tunisia will fit in. And then the agreement on the repositories, depending on the choice there. And then the dashboarding relating to the university dashboard. So the generic dashboard is there, the health RI dashboard for COVID-19 research. And as per the architecture of Francesca, these can be in one Vodan dashboard for us, but they can be split in terms of control and security between the two parts coming either from research or from patient data. But that was a very insightful question. Thank you.
Thanks, Professor Miriam. Yeah, do you want to add something, Professor Francisca?
Yes. I just wanted to, because I know the IBBUL, they have a similar thing with the Tunisia. I want to request for the team to look into working to joining the ZON-MW project if possible, so that we can also implement this for the IBBUL, because they have their own work tailored towards research data as well. I have sent a message to Abdullah to consider that I could set up a meeting with Professor Mariam to see how we can make them also join that. But this, generally, it's just the replica. You're going to have the replica for research data in the universities. So this is more like the generic access and control, but Putu picked it from the healthcare data.
Yeah, thank you, Prof. Thank you, Professor Mariam and Professor Francisca. Yeah, I think we're happy to work with others on the other project. Thank you.
Thanks, Abdullahi. I think we should move to the next session. It's about the FAIR Special Journal. Who will be make a presentation about this? Is it Misha or Dr. Sakinat?
So Professor Miriam will lead the discussion on.
Oh, okay, Professor. Okay.
Yeah, thank you. I think I will give Dr. Sakinat first the floor for a short presentation on the instructions, particularly pertaining to abstracts and the structure of the articles. But before I do, I would like to say that I've gone through all the articles today, including the one Professor Ronalds and Dr. Reginald, 26, but also all others. The 26, I'm still making some comments, but all other articles you have received comments today, so please refer to that. 3 articles have been sent to the editor. 1 is already received back from Mariam on fair equivalency, I think. So there's a lot of progress, and things are really now in high turnover speed, also because now the editor is 100% of her time on the special issue. We have had a meeting with Feng Hong Liu from Data Intelligence, and she has made us the offer, Dr. Sakina, that we will have 2 special issues instead of 1 because of the quality of the papers received. So big congratulations to you for leading this, and a fantastic outcome for all of us in the team. Over to you, Professor Sakinat.
Sakinat, are you there? Dr. Sakinat?
I think
Yes.
she's there.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you. Yes, I'm here. Thank you so much for another opportunity today. I hope that the network will allow me finish up today. But if not, hopefully Professor Francisca will bail me out, like always. The article, the presentation today is just going to be based on how we should format our article, and especially our abstract, since it is the F in our FAIR guideline. Next slide, please. Next slide. Yes, so the outline of our talk is going to be, no, can you go back up one slide? Yes, this is the outline that we are starting with the title, abstract, keyword and references. Yes, I think that I made a little correction on this. Aliyah, please, can you upload the second one that I sent to you? I made some corrections on that. So next slide. Okay, so now the holistic view of what we are going to be talking about today is the abstract and the article, but we are going to be based majorly on the abstract because the abstract summarizes the whole article. So it gives the overall view of what the article is all about. Next slide. Yeah, so we start with the title. We expect the title to describe the content of the article clearly, and because it advertises the article, and is the F to find the article, and we do not expect any abbreviations in our title or any. What we mean by jargon is as a word that is particular to the subject domain. Then the article title too should be able to be found by search engines or any indexing database. Next slide. Yeah, so our abstract now is simply a brief standalone summary of our article, or it could be our research article or our thesis or review, just to aid the reader to quickly ascertain the paper's purpose or the article purpose. So we emphasize the word standalone because we abstract don't entertain references. So they are standalone, they are not referenced, and they are just a brief summary of our research article, and it is always at the beginning of our manuscript. So we should take care of our abstract since is the first point of call when our article is being searched. Next slide. Yeah, so now this is kind of wordy. How do we get started with the abstract? We encourage us to write our abstract last because when you write your article, any changes that you encounter at the end of the day or what you find at the end of the day is what you put in your abstract. Then we also advise that you review your abstract and understand any requirements for writing, like the maximum length. Like for this, our data article now, we encourage between 200 and maximum 500. Then if there is any style requirements, or if you are writing your audience, who are you writing your article for? Is it for publication or is it for instruction or what other things? Then you should consider your audience too. Is it an academic audience, or are you trying to educate some other group of people on the fair equivalency or fair subjects? Then we also determine the type of abstract that you are writing. Are you writing a descriptive abstract or an informative abstract? Of course, descriptive abstracts contain the purpose, the goal, and the method of your research. So you should have this. And most often time, maybe between 100 and 200 words, but each journal, they have their own styles and their own maximum and minimum length. So the informative abstract, they are like a condensed version of your paper, a summary. You know, they also follow that introduction parts, introduction, body of work, results, and conclusion part. So for the informative abstract. So now writing your abstract now depends on the kind of work that you carry out at the end of the day. Thank you. Next slide. Putu. So now, before
it's Alia, Dr. Sakinat.
Okay, Alia, all right. So identify your purpose. Why are you writing this article? Or what is your aim? Or what do you hope to achieve at the end of the day? Then how will you conduct your research? Then what did you find at the end of the day? And we say that you just base your writing, your discussion, or your theory based on what you find, or not what you think you should find. And why is this research and your findings, why are they important? And then why should somebody read your entire essay or your write-up? Next slide. So then you should also try to explain the problem at hand. You go from known to unknown. So what is the problem? What problem is your research trying to solve? Of course, there should be there should be an existing problem that you are trying to address. You are trying to make it better. Then what is the purpose or your scope of your study? How far are you going? And then what is the claim or argument that you are trying to resolve here? Next slide. Now you should explain your method. How did you carry it out? What method or what tool did you use? You describe the evidence you have to support your claim, and just give overview of most of your resources that you used. Next slide. So then you also describe your result. What did you find? Or what answer did you reach from your research study? And was your hypothesis, was it supported by your result? What is your general finding altogether? That is what you put in your abstract. Next slide. Then you also give conclusion. What are the implications of your work, and your result? Was it general or specific, or you give both general and specific results? These are the way to go about our abstract writing. Next slide. So now, formatting your abstract now. One, you keep it in order. Of course, it has to be in a logical order. The order in the article that you wrote, you should also keep that order in your abstract, like the specific questions that your abstract addressed. Then you should also follow the introduction, method, results, and conclusion format. You also follow that too while writing your abstract, and then you give helpful information, no acronyms. We don't advise that, or we don't encourage that. Then you don't include tables or figures or sources in your abstracts. Then we advise that we write our article from scratch, so that we don't carry over some information in some other abstract that we are trying to copy or we are trying to quote. Then you should write your abstract using completely new vocabularies, so that we also avoid plagiarism. Then you use keywords or key phrase or keyword phrases between 4 to 7. But it also depends on the journal. Some say between 4 and 6 keywords is enough. And these keywords, they are according to your write-up. We use it to find your article or your manuscript. So you can use for this our special journal. Some of the words that we expect to be in the keywords are what like fair, like verification, metadata, FDP, data stewards, and things like that. So these are the kind of the keywords or reserved words that we expect there. Next slide. So, okay, continuation of the formatting. Then you use the real information that you have, not synthesized information from elsewhere. Then you avoid being too specific, because when you write abstract is for the general. So you avoid being specific to your domain. you use words or examples that other people can understand. Then when you get to the body of the work, then you can be very, very specific, or use domain specific vocabularies. Then you also avoid jargons and some other specific words that are not too general. Then you should do some basic revisions like grammar and spelling errors. Or you could also try to get feedback from your friend or somebody that knows not so much about your work, and see if the workflows, or you're able to pass across the information to the person. Or you could also ask your professors or somebody that is well versed or veteran in the area to go over your work for you, and see where you are missing out some points. Next slide. So the overall summary is that the components of the abstract are: you write an introduction, the method you use, results, and the conclusion. So you try to summarize all this, and they should not exceed 500 words. Next slide. Then the abstract, they should not be too lengthy. We don't encourage acronyms. I said that earlier. Then you don't put references to other literatures in your abstract, then or using ellipses or citation of other work. So don't put them in the abstract, or any sort of image or illustration or figure. No, you don't put them in the abstract. Next slide. So then we move on to the keyword or keyword phrases. So these keyword phrases, they should be specific to the article. Like is our F in fair is findable. So each time this keyword should come up in any search engine or any indexing database, then that means that it should fish out your article. There is also an indicator to the article. We try to not to be too many words, between 4 to 6 important words. Next slide. Yes, this is an example of an abstract from the journal. For this one is a generic workflow for verification process. So we tried to dissect the abstract. Now, the first part, that's why we color them differently. The first part is like an introduction to the article, telling you from what is known in the literature, the gap, the research gap there, or the research problem. Then the second one, colored orange, that is the aim, the purpose of the article, why the article, what you hope to achieve at the end of the day. That is what you have there. Then the third one, which is colored yellow, it also have shows the method that you adopted in the work, the method that the authors of this research paper, the method that they adopted is colored yellow. Then the last one is the significance and the implication of their work. And their work is centered around the fair data steward, and is also good for all researchers. Next slide. Yeah, this is another example of abstract from Data Intelligence Journal that was dissected also. This article started from the goal of the paper, and we can see that the acronyms there were already defined before we put the acronym there. Then he also tried to explain the method, his approach to the problem at hand. Then finally, the results he obtained and the conclusion he made. So you could see that the abstract is short, but it's very concise. It has all the points that we need in the abstract. Next slide. So this is the anatomy of the whole article. Now, we have talked about the title, the abstract, and the keyword. Then we also move down to introduction. That is the introduction of the article. You tell us what is known, you tell us what is unknown, your objective and the hypothesis, and what you are trying to do, the relationship gap. Sometimes you could also add the review of literature into the introduction. That is kind of what is known already or what people have done. Now, what are you going to do now? Then we move on to method, results, and then discussion. Next slide. So under the introduction now, we have the study introduction, the knowledge gap, and the knowledge stage, the study aim. What are you going to do? Then the objective of the study. Next slide. So the method now, you provide the reader with enough detail so that they can reproduce your work. How did you do it? You have to be detailed about it. Then you explain how you study the problem. Then now you identify the procedures and the other process that you follow. Then the methodology in detail such that your work will be reproducible. Then if you use data, then you have to tell us where you got it, the kind of data that you're using. Is it an image? Is it a text? How did you get it? Where did you get it? From what period to what period? Then and the sources of your data. Then you'll be precise in describing the measurement of the data you used. Next slide. So then the results. Now, what did you find after carrying out your research work? Was your hypothesis, was it supported? What are the general findings? Then the major or the specific findings that you have. Then what domain metric do you use? Like if it's for analysis now, like for machine learning now, you could use metrics like accuracy, like recall, and some other things. Then what answer did you reach from your research or your study? Or did the results that you obtained, did they meet up with the objectives that were listed earlier? So that's the kind of thing that we look for in the results. Next slide. Next slide, please. So then the discussion and conclusion. So then what did you find? You describe your results, then you don't extend your conclusion beyond what is directly supported. So we had said that earlier. So you don't imagine that this is how the result. You tell us, or you discuss, or you make your conclusion based on the results that you obtained or you achieved. Next slide. So these are then after that, after your conclusion, and then you write a reference. Every work that is cited, every work that you use, or every work in the literature that you use must be cited, and every word that is cited, it must be referenced at the end of the article. They must be adequately referenced. So then you avoid references that are too difficult. Then you avoid listing greater references. Then we also encourage that we use references that are recent, because technology changes, idea changes, people bring in new things every time, so we don't encourage to use references that are too far. Next slide. So now for our special issue, our article timeline, we are still within the timeline. Now we are moving from review of the first draft now, all the first draft of articles that we have received. We are moving now to the second draft of the article, so that submission of the second draft of the article that has been reviewed or revised or being reviewed by our reviewer, so that any correction that needs to be done, we expect to receive this by the end of the month we are in now. So we are still along the line, and we also encourage other authors that some are working remotely, that they submit the article so that we can review it and send it to the editor. We still want to meet our deadline. Next slide. So the requirement for our paper is that you submit an abstract. I made a correction on the other one that between 200 and 500 words for abstract. Then the words that between 4,500 and 7,000 words. Then few abbreviations. Then you address a particular problem, because when you are writing an article, we expect that you have one aim and probably several objectives to achieve your aim. We don't expect too many points. Next slide, please. So requirements for author. This is very important to us because we discovered that there's not so much synergies between the authors of a paper. So who can we actually call an author? An author, because of the academic legacy. So we have to define who an author can be. That an author can somebody that's contributed to the paper writing, and or somebody that have we encourage multitude author too. An author will also be somebody that conceived the idea of the paper writing or made proposal, or somebody that designed the research framework, or somebody that collected and analyzed data, or somebody that drafted the article, revised it critically for important or intellectual context, or final approval. All authors must approve. So those who participated in discussion or just offer language editing, we put their names in acknowledgement. So I hope that this slide has defined who authors can be. So we encourage the synergy between authors of articles, so that an article that you have dropped your name for, you participate well in the writing of the paper, so that you can give a final approval for your paper. Next slide. So now for the data article, the data intelligence journal, now they have different kinds of article: data article, commentary article, research article, data application, or letter to the editor. So these are the article, but the commentary articles are usually invited by editors. So not just anybody can write that, but for our special issue, we have just data article, research article, and the data application. Next slide. Next slide. I know I'm running out of time. For the data article, these are examples of what we can have in data article, or if you have an ontology, a new one, or a knowledge graph, or a new vocabulary. Next slide. Next slide. Also, okay, the sections, if you are writing for a data article, these are the sections we expect to be there: introduction, value of data, acquirement, how you acquire your data, applications and limitation. Next slide. Then if it's a research article, these are the things that we expect to be in the research article: the data sharing, integration, or a data analysis of the new data that you are introducing. Next slide. Okay, these are the section: introduction, methodology, result, discussion, and conclusion. Next slide. So next slide, we can move on to the next slide. Next slide. Okay, so now for the data article, this is their format for writing an article. They have the title, abstract, keyword, introduction. So if we are writing for the data intelligence journal now, and this is the way they write the article. They have a beginning section, middle section, ending, and then other elements like supporting information. Next slide. So the referencing style now for the data article journal is IEEE referencing style, which whereby you write, it is numbered inside the text, inside the body of the manuscript. That is citation. Then you write it out at the end of the article. Next slide. Yes, so these are different ways that you can reference your related work. If you use a book in print, this is an example. If you use a chapter in book, this is an example. Or if you are referencing an ebook, this is a way to reference it if you are using the IEEE format. Next slide. Next slide. So we'll still continue with that. Next slide, please. So this is an example an article from the Data Intelligence Journal. Is an implementation article, and these are the addressing fair principles that were used, and this is the title, and these are the list of authors that participated in the article writing. Next slide. I'm almost through. Next slide, please, Alia. So this is the abstract. Oh, this is actually the abstract that I dissected earlier. So this is actually that was dissected earlier, and this could not be more than 275 words. Next slide. So that these are the keywords like fair data, verification workflow. Next slide. Yes, I think I'm rounding up now. And this is citation. I gave an example of the circle red. So if you are citing using IEEE, the circle will reference using numbers. Thank you.
Well, that was,
thank you. I think I'm done.
Yeah, that was very good and very comprehensive, Sakinat. And really on the articles, everybody is doing a really great job. So actually this big lecture was not in the sense that we are panicking that things are not done according to these rules. It's just really to put the detail on all of this. But really, the articles are getting in very good shape. The thing about the abstract is very important in relation to some of the articles, and for some, it's really focused on putting all of these different elements in place. For the review, we have followed exactly the same format, so you will see the consistency. So I think that for this, everything is ready. The overview of where the articles are is also sent in the chat. So I think Putu, Alia, that we are ready because we are way over time, but a very good session.
Yeah, thanks, Dr. Sakinat and Professor Miriam. That's really good presentation, and I will upload it into the WhatsApp and also in the Slack. So is there any last question or comment before we close the session? Okay, I don't think
Hello?
so. And then,
sorry.
Yeah.
Hello, Putu. This is Wandemu. Sorry, just, I'm leading 3 research article. I know that I'm a bit behind. I would like to ask, the apology because, so many things in my shoulder. So I think now I'm working because at the beginning, I tried to assign co-authors for subsection, but I found that, it doesn't fit with some of the issue. And at the same time, we have also, so far we started some special issue. We are going to publish 13 special issue, and most of them are led by me. So I'm working on it. So I hope I will come back to the team by next week, some progress, and then maybe I will try to pass the first draft, because I will try to do my best in order to make it very well first draft. So just I would like to ask apology for the getting behind. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks Wandimu for your confirmation.
Okay, please, I have a question, please.
Yeah, Ezekiel.
Yeah, thank you so much. So concerning the data article, I don't know, is there any template for that, for this journal?
You can check in data-intelligence.org, and then there is a template. Yeah, you can go ahead, Dr. Sakina.
Hello, let me answer that. Actually, there is a WAT template and latest template, but the data article have just I think if you can get access to this these slides, the format for presenting data article is there. So just follow the formats.
So what I meant is that for other journals like Elsevier, they have a template that you must use before you can submit your data article. So I'm asking if something
There's
is
templates.
also
Yes, there's
available like
templates.
this.
Yes, yes, yes.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Dr. Sakinat, for answering that question. I think there is no question or comment anymore. So thank you, everyone, to participating in this session. As always, the video recording of the webinar will be available this week in every channels, such as websites like OSF and WhatsApp group. Thanks again for joining us. We will see you next week. Bye.